I just lived through something that still makes my hands shake. A story I wish I never had to tell, because it starts with a fake cop, a cosplay wannabe, pointing a loaded gun at my 11-year-old son, all because of a toy, a tiny plastic drone. They thought a little aggression and a plastic badge would shut down the situation, but what they really did was pick a fight with the absolute wrong person, and they blew up their entire lives in the process. Let me take you back to Amberwood Heights. We moved here for the promise, you know? Wide lawns, pristine fences, that whole neighborhood watch fantasy. And for 7 perfect days, I genuinely thought we'd landed in a real estate fairy tale. Low drama, quiet streets. I even grilled a celebratory steak on night 2, like I was christening the place with smoke and joy. Then, Patty Thorne showed up. She didn't introduce herself, she issued a correction. "We tend to keep the recycling bins tucked back against the garage wall, Mr. Reed, not out by the curb until Tuesday." That was her opener. No welcome, no, "Hi, I'm Patty." Just a verbal parking ticket delivered with a clipboard and a smirk that suggested she knew something about my poor life choices that I didn't. I gave her a polite nod, shut the garage, and immediately added her to a mental list titled "People I Will Outlive Purely Out of Spite." Patty moved like a hall monitor who'd recently discovered Pilates. Tight steps, chin up, clipboard gripped like it contained the Declaration of Neighborhood Independence. She was the HOA incarnate, and any doubt I had about that was murdered when the first letter showed up. Typed, triple-folded, taped to my front door like it was ashamed of itself. "Your household has been observed engaging in excessive noise and disruptive outdoor activities. This is your official HOA courtesy notice." Right? Courtesy, huh? There's something truly poetic about threatening someone with 5-figure fines and still calling it friendly. Now, meet the real MVP of this story. My son, Leo. 11 years old, pure trouble, powered entirely by imagination and a questionable intake of energy drinks. The kid doesn't walk, he calculates trajectory. Last summer, he rigged an abandoned Roomba to deliver ice cream cones down the stairs. That was a Tuesday. He once modified a water gun into a pulsed hydro cannon using a bicycle pump. That was a Sunday. He's a creative genius with the focus of a laser beam. And Patty hated him instantly because his existence was disorderly. Her first official report? Unsupervised juvenile utilizing non-sanctioned low-flying aerial devices. He was flying a $10 foam glider in our backyard. I told her that. She told me the bylaws stipulated visual line of sight clearance from neighboring parcel egress points. Sure, Patty. Then came the $75 fine. Violation? Aesthetic interference. Translation, Leo's custom-built Mini Rover 7, a little RC car with tracks, had briefly spun a mud rut the size of a quarter onto her meticulously manicured corner of the sidewalk. I should have fined her for having the world's most aggressively manicured sidewalk, but I just paid it. But things escalated, fast. The next week, 2 dudes in matching, tactical-looking windbreakers showed up, sniffing around. Their badges looked like they were laminated at a Staples. One of them, a thick-necked guy named Vic Stone, wore tactical gloves. For what, exactly? Trimming hedges at high speed? "Compliance check," he barked, flipping open a notebook. "Reported structure that violates landscaping guidelines." "You mean the box fort?" I asked, trying to keep a phrase safe. "Fortified cardboard," he clarified. "Obstructs visual line of sight from the street." From what? Happiness? Leo was inside building a sensor array for a Nerf turret with some PVC pipe and Amazon boxes duct taped to a wagon. He called it the Defender 5000. I called it a sign of a healthy childhood. They left with more photos than necessary and 0 answers for who had sent them, though Patty was watching from across the street like she was live streaming an ambush. That night, I installed 2 new motion-sensing cameras, and at 1:36 a.m., the feed lit up. 2 figures, flashlights, the same windbreakers. Vic crouched near my mailbox. The other guy leaned close to the garage window, not peeking, but recording. Then Vic walked slowly across the front yard, panning his phone like he was taking inventory of my soul. He wasn't inspecting, he was casing. That's not HOA, that's premeditation. I downloaded the footage. I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared, but because I was livid. I knew this wasn't over, and that they had just activated something deeply protective inside me, something I hadn't used in years. The next morning, Patty returned like a villain in a daytime drama, same smug energy, only now she had a folder under her arm thick enough to choke a small animal. "This is your 4th documented infraction," she practically licked her lips. "Of what?" I asked. Leo stood beside me with a Pop-Tart and a foam sword trying to look big. "Parental neglect, unauthorized noise, recreational structures blocking driveway visibility." "You mean the slip and slide and the marshmallow cannon? They obstruct driveway visibility? Should I start charging you for the view of my family trying to exist?" She didn't flinch. "One more incident, Mr. Reed, and we'll escalate to formal enforcement." "You mean like the mall cops sneaking around my house at 2 in the morning?" "Routine inspection," she snapped. "Some violations are best verified under low-light conditions." Leo looked up at me, his eyes wide, the Pop-Tart forgotten. "Did I do something wrong, Dad?" I crouched beside him. "No, buddy, you just exist louder than she likes. That's not a crime." He didn't smile. He didn't go outside that afternoon. And that pissed me off more than any fine ever could. As Patty turned to leave, she leaned in, her voice low and venomous. "You think this is about your son? It's not. It's about keeping this place clean. If you can't control the disruption, the community will." She turned and walked off like she had just dropped a mic instead of a threat. I stood there on the porch, heart pounding, fist clenched, not scared, just completely done. This wasn't about lawn maintenance anymore. This was about control. Patty Thorne had just declared war. And the next time Vic Stone showed up, he didn't knock, he didn't measure the lawn, he didn't take pictures.
It was a Tuesday afternoon. Leo had just crushed his coding challenge and asked if he could test a new power source in celebration. His words. We compromised on a low-stakes backyard ambush, foam darts, a plywood ramp, and an RC tank he'd modified to emit the sound of a very aggressive goose. For the first time in weeks, he was laughing. That deep, cackling snort laugh that only happens when your kid forgets the world's been closing in on him. Then Vic Stone showed up. No knock, no warning, just the sudden sound of heavy, fast boots on concrete. I stepped onto the porch and froze. Vic wasn't walking this time. He was charging, breathing hard, focused, and in his hand, not a clipboard, not a citation, but something black, heavy, familiar. It hung low at his side like a dead weight, and the second I saw it, something inside me snapped, cold and primal. It was a pistol, not holstered, not secured, just outside and exposed, carried like it had a job to do. Leo saw him before I could say a word. The laughter died in his throat. He didn't scream, he didn't move. Vic raised the weapon, slowly, deliberately. "Kid, drop the device. Put it down." The device in question, a custom-painted RC controller with 2 joysticks and a red blinking LED, a toy from Hobby Lobby. Vic saw a threat. I saw my son, barefoot on the sidewalk, confused, small, frozen in terror. I moved. I don't remember crossing the grass. I remember sprinting, but my feet never touched the ground. One second I was on the porch, the next I was standing between Vic and Leo, my arms wide like wings. "Lower the weapon," I roared. Vic twitched but didn't drop it. "That device was reported as surveillance grade." "It's a toy, you psychopath. You're not law enforcement. You're a walking felony with a glue-on badge." He blinked, the first crack in his armor of fake power. I turned slightly, just enough to see Leo, who was pressed into my back, silently shaking. He has a gun," he whispered. "I know, buddy. I'm right here." Did I do something wrong?" He backed up, his breath stuck in his chest. No scream, no sound, just those wide, wet eyes staring past me. "No, buddy." My voice broke. You just played in the wrong neighborhood. Vic stepped forward, the barrel twitched, and just as I started to raise my arm, ready to shield Leo even if I couldn't stop a bullet, I heard it. The sirens. One cruiser, then another, then two black SUVs that didn't even pretend to slow down. They rolled in hot, lights blazing, tires screaming. Vic spun around, doors flew open, real deputies stepped out, and at the front of the charge was my brother, Marcus, the deputy chief. His badge gleaming, his face a mask of cold fury. He didn't yell, he didn't draw, he just walked up and said, "Drop it." Vic hesitated. "This is a sanctioned operation," he stammered. Marcus didn't flinch. "You're impersonating an officer and pointing a loaded weapon at a child. You have 5 seconds." Vic dropped the gun. It hit the grass with a heavy, sickening thud. Two deputies tackled him so hard they knocked the air out of the street. Leo collapsed into me, and I wrapped my arms around him like they were the last safe place in the world. Vic was screaming, "It's a setup! This is a hit job!" Patty was already filming from across the street, calm, smiling. I walked toward her, steady, quiet. She didn't flinch. "He escalated the situation," she said, calm, smiling. I replied, "He's unstable, and you knew it. You tried to create a safer community by pointing a gun at a kid?" "No one listened to me," she snapped, her confidence finally cracking. "So I found someone who would." By sunset, Vic was booked. But this wasn't the end. It was the moment I started my counterattack. You see, before we moved to Amberwood, I wasn't flipping houses. I was in federal compliance and investigations. I knew how to push paperwork until it hit like a freight train. The body cam footage hit my brother's office the next morning. Vic rambling in the back of the cruiser. Then came the line that changed everything. Patty told me to scare him, said the kid needed to learn consequences. That wasn't a theory. It was a confession. I didn't file a complaint. I triggered an audit. I used favors and burner access I hadn't touched in years. In under 48 hours, we had everything. The HOA's full archive, payment trails, and redacted financials that weren't redacted anymore. Patty's forged emails and her administrative fees, over $14,000 rerouted from community enforcement into a personal consulting business tied only to her and her ridiculously spoiled poodle. Then we found the list, a spreadsheet labeled Watch List Alpha on her hard drive. 87 addresses, color-coded, not for violations, but for targets, noise risk, visible children, aesthetic nonconformity. And then we got the call. A blocked number, a shaky voice. That fake cop. He did something to my son. We found 2 more families. Amelia, 9 years old, nonverbal, who suffered a skull fracture and concussion after Vic chased her over her toy drone. And Finn, whose mother was too terrified to call the police because Vic had threatened to trigger their rental eviction clause. 2 children injured, 1 family displaced, all documented on Patty's watch list. We filed a joint civil claim, 2 families, 2 children, 1 coordinated cover-up, harassment, child endangerment, conspiracy. The story went regional, then national. The sheriff's office dropped the hammer. Conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to child endangerment. The judge froze Patty's assets. The community had had enough. 73 residents signed a petition to dissolve the HOA. The vote was unanimous. Patty's kingdom was erased. The last time I saw her, she was standing at her mailbox looking utterly defeated. No clipboard, no phone, just silent. I walked across the street and handed her the final notice. It was a formal municipal citation, flagged for inspection due to prior abuse of authority. It meant her meticulously perfect home would now be subject to the same random, inconvenient inspections she'd used as a weapon. You didn't fail a neighborhood, Patty. You hunted people. My voice was low and final. She just stared, blankly. That was the thing about people like Patty. They don't apologize. They just run out of things to say.
I got home and found Leo in the driveway. He held up a rolled blueprint like a victory banner. Turret upgrades? I asked. Mark IV, auto-rotate, foam darts, and an emergency snack bay. Think it'll keep him away this time? If not, we'll build one with Wi-Fi and legal backing. He laughed, and then he taped a sign to his new prototype. Warning, justice installed. This whole nightmare wasn't about power washing or shrub heights. It was about what happens when people believe rules only apply to others. Patty thought the clipboard made her judge and jury. Vic thought a badge gave him control. But what they never understood is that some of us know how the system works better than they do. And when you go after my family, when you take a child's safety and innocence, you don't get to vanish behind policy. You don't get to walk away. Not in this neighborhood. Not ever again. Call to action. Tell me what you think in the comments. When dealing with extreme HOA power trips, did I cross the line by using my federal contacts to bring down the whole structure, or was going nuclear the only way to protect my son and the other children? Let me know your stance and share your own HOA horror stories below.